동물. 마사 너스바움은 바로 지금이 위대한 자각의 시점이라 믿습니다. 동물을 위한 정의라는 대의를 받아들일 때라는 거죠. 과연 마사 너스바움이 말하는 동물을 위한 정의란 무엇일까요?
Welcome to EBS 위대한 수업 Great Minds. My name is Martha C. Nussbaum, and the title of my lecture is Justice for Animals, Practical Progress Through Philosophical Theory. Animals suffer injustice at our hands. The cruelties of the factory farming industry, poaching and trophy hunting, assaults on the habitats of many creatures, and innumerable other instances of cruelty and neglect. So what is injustice? Here are some stories that will yield an intuitive account. My examples will only be the smallest sample of what can befall an animal and only a sample of animal kinds, and I'm going to pair two descriptions. One of the animal going about its life flourishing, and another of the animal brought to grief by wrongful human treatment. Let me then introduce you to three particular animals. So first, the mother elephant, Virginia's story. Often, however, Virginia is on the move, covering huge tracts of grassland, her feet padding noiselessly across the floor of Kenya's Amboseli National Park. Her new baby elephant walks beneath her belly, sheltered by that enormous maternal frame. Now, consider something that might happen, that often does happen. Virginia lies on her side, dead, her tusks and trunk hacked off by a machete, her face a bloody red hole. The ivory trade flourishes despite many attempts to curb it. Second, Hal the whale's story. In the distance, several pods of humpback whales appear, breaching and slapping their tails and flukes. Their huge backs gleam in the sun. One of them is Hal. Over the boat's motor, we hear the whales singing. Now, look at a different possible Hal, washed up, dead, on a beach in the Philippines. The once healthy frame is emaciated, and inside, researchers find 88 pounds of plastic trash, including bags, cups, bottles, and other single-use items. Plastic gives whales a sensation of fullness, but no real nutrition. Eventually, they're filled up and they can't eat anything more, and so they starve to death. Third, the sow, the story of the Empress of Blandings. The Empress of Blandings is a noble black Berkshire sow of enormous size, cared for as a favorite companion on the estate of Blandings Castle. The Empress has had the bad fate to be living on a hog farm in Iowa in the 21st century. Now, newly pregnant, she has been thrust into what's known as a gestation crate, which is a narrow metal enclosure just the size of her body, with no bedding, floored with slats of concrete or metal, to allow waste to descend into sewage lagoons below. She cannot walk or turn around, and she cannot even lie down. One type of frustration is being forced to defecate near where they live and eat, because sows are actually very clean animals, and they normally try to defecate very far from where they eat. Intelligence takes manifold forms in our world. and creatures from the octopus and marine creatures of many different kinds, to birds, amazingly versatile and long underestimated, have many different types of intelligence, some of which we humans don't possess. Birds, for example, can navigate using a sensory ability to perceive magnetic fields, which of course we lack. Well, dolphins can determine what's inside an object they approach by a different sensory faculty for what's called echolocation. That is the ability to figure out what's inside an object by picking up the reverberations that come back from that object. A surprising instance was that a captive dolphin found out that her trainer was pregnant before the trainer herself was aware of that. She used the sign for pregnancy. The trainer thought, oh no, she's learned the wrong sign. But then she went home and took the test, and in fact, she was pregnant. So, nature does not present a ladder. It presents instead amazing horizontal variety, each creature having the capacities suited to its niche and its form of life. As an approach to justice in the human world, it holds that a minimally just society will provide each and every citizen with a threshold level of 10 significant capabilities. Capabilities are substantive opportunities for choice, not just inner abilities or abstract possibilities. As an approach to justice for animals, my approach holds that all sentient creatures, that is, all who have an internal subjectivity, a point of view on the world, a category that includes, I believe, all vertebrates and many invertebrates. For two reasons, this approach to the other animals is not possible at present. First, the other animals often cross national boundaries, or even occupy regions of air and sea that are not the property of any one nation. So, a national constitution is not sufficient to protect migratory species. Second, there isn't anything like sufficient political will in most nations of the world right now to enact such protections. Right now, therefore, the CA aims to supply a virtual constitution to which nations, states, and regions may look in trying to improve or newly frame their animal protective laws. This will take time and work, but so too does the task of framing and protecting human rights. Still, this flexible approach permits nations to stride boldly ahead without waiting to get a global consensus. The basic goal is that all animals would have the opportunity to live lives compatible with their dignity and their striving up to some reasonable threshold level, and with exceptions for self-defense and the defense of others. Subsection B, lists and lives. Ideally, we should learn enough to make a separate list for each species of animal, putting on the list the things that matter most when it comes to survival and flourishing. In effect, the list is really made by the animals themselves as they express their deepest concerns as they try to live. The people who can be trusted to record the unheard voices of animals are people who have lived with a given type of animal for many years and with love and sensitivity. Ideally, there should be a group of such people for each species, because any individual can get it wrong. These guardians and listeners should know individual animals within a species in all their variety, and know the obstacles each creature faces and what interventions prove helpful. This means a huge number of different lists. However, I believe that if we focus on the large general rubrics of the CA list for humans, as it exists now, it offers good guidance as a starting point in virtually all cases. Thus, each kind of animal has its own form of social organization and even of sense perception. Some animals, as I said, have senses that we lack, perception of magnetic fields, echolocation. And usually the senses that we do have are realized differently in animal lives. Different types of hearing, sight, and perhaps especially smell. Only painstaking and loving study will show what should be said. Subsection C, fertile functionings, corrosive disadvantages. Because the approach I envisage is specific to each type of animal life, its demands are many and heterogeneous. But within each case, and even across many cases, there are likely to be capabilities that are particularly fertile, meaning that they promote good life across the board, and capability failures that are especially corrosive or damaging. For all animals, subjection to arbitrary human violence is a corrosive disadvantage, whether it takes the form of whales' vulnerability to harpooning, elephants' vulnerability to poaching, female pigs' confinement in gestation crates, or a dog's vulnerability to so-called owners' cruelty and neglect. Another corrosive disadvantage across the board is environmental pollution, which causes lethal conditions, whether of air or water, for many species and depletes their habitats. So the opposite of these bad things, that is, bans on cruel practices and a dedication to environmental cleanup, will prove fertile, enhancing capabilities across the board for many animals.